Hey everybody, welcome back to Everyday English Pod.
Glad to be here.
Today we are looking at something that I think is pretty universal,
Yeah,
something that we've all done and we've all experienced, and that's reading books.
absolutely.
And it's really interesting because, obviously we read for fun, we read to pass the time, but it's actually a really, really powerful tool for so many different areas of your life.
I think that's right. I think it's easy to dismiss reading as just kind of a leisure activity. It's just a way to entertain yourself.
Right.
But when you start to think about all the different ways that it helps us grow and all the different skills that it helps us develop, it becomes something a lot more significant.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most obvious places to start is by looking at how reading really helps you improve your language.
Yeah,
Just even your vocabulary, even
Yeah.
just the way that you're able to communicate.
for sure.
Just naturally by reading, you start picking up new words.
You do, and it's interesting because it's not something that you're consciously trying to do right. You're not sitting there with a dictionary and, trying to memorize lists of vocabulary.
Right.
You're just reading something that you enjoy, and as you're reading it, you're encountering new words in context.
Yeah.
And just by seeing those words used naturally in a sentence, in a paragraph, in a story,
Yeah.
you start to absorb their meaning and you start to internalize them.
And you remember them. I think that's the other thing that's so powerful about it is when you see a word in context, as opposed to, just looking at a dictionary definition,
Yeah.
you're so much more likely to remember that word and actually be able to use it yourself.
Yeah, that's right. And, you're not just picking up individual words either. You're also picking up on common phrases
Oh, yeah.
and expressions that native speakers use, so you start to get a feel for the natural rhythm of the language.
Absolutely. And I think for English language learners, this is something that's really, really important. And actually, the material that we were looking at really emphasized this idea of, finding books that are at your level
Yes.
and gradually, increasing the difficulty as you go.
Right, right.
So it's all about building up that muscle.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go to the gym and immediately try to lift the heaviest weight.
Exactly.
You want to kind of build up to it. And this is the same thing with language.
That's right. I mean, it's all about that gradual progression and that gradual building of your skills. And one thing that's really helpful for that,
Yeah.
particularly for English language learners, is listening to audiobooks.
Oh my gosh, audiobooks. Yeah. They're so
Because it's like having a conversation with a native speaker
Yeah.
right in your ear.
Yeah. And I love that it helps with pronunciation,
Absolutely.
because you're hearing those words spoken correctly.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of training your ear to recognize those sounds.
And it helps you with listening comprehension, too, because you're having to follow along with a story
Yeah.
that's being told at an actual pace.
Right. Right.
So it's a really good way to improve your overall listening skills.
Yeah. And one thing that I've noticed both with audiobooks and with reading is that you really start to see how native speakers structure sentences,
Oh, for sure.
and how they use idioms and things like that. And so it really helps you to kind of internalize those patterns.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that can be really tricky for English language learners is, you can learn the grammar rules,
Right.
but then when you actually hear native speakers talking,
Yeah.
they don't always follow those rules perfectly, or they use idioms and expressions that you've never heard before.
Yeah, it's so true. So it's like, you can learn the textbook version of the language,
Mhm.
but reading and listening to audiobooks really gives you that real world experience.
That real world fluency.
That,
Exactly.
I think one of the best parts about books is dialogue. I love reading dialogue because it's like you're getting a glimpse into,
A fly on the wall.
yeah, exactly, a fly on the wall in an actual conversation.
That's right. And it's not just about, the words that people are using. It's also about how they're using them.
Right.
Right. So you can pick up on the nuances of conversational flow.
Yeah.
You know how people ask questions, how they respond, how they interrupt each other.
How they express emotions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All of those things.
All of those things that you don't necessarily get from just studying a textbook.
Absolutely.
And one thing that I think is a really good tip for anyone who wants to improve their English is to read aloud.
Oh.
Yeah. Have you ever done that?
I do that all the time.
It's so helpful because it forces you to slow down
Yes.
and really think about the words that you're reading.
Yeah, and it helps you with pronunciation too,
It really does.
because you're actually having to say the words out loud.
Yeah.
And it's also just a really good way to kind of solidify that connection between the written word and the spoken word.
Yeah, it's like you're making it more real in a way.
Absolutely.
So we've talked a lot about how reading can help you improve your language skills,
Yeah.
but it's also incredibly powerful for just helping you understand the world.
Oh, for sure.
Better just understanding people, better understanding different cultures. And I think, one of the things that books do so well is they transport you to different places and different times.
That's right.
So whether you're reading a historical novel or a science fiction book or a biography, you're getting this glimpse into a world that's different from your own.
And I think that's so important for building empathy.
Yeah.
Because it helps you to understand that other people have different experiences,
Yes.
different perspectives, different ways of looking at the world.
And it makes you realize that your way of looking at the world isn't the only way.
That's right.
And that there are all these other valid perspectives out there.
Absolutely.
And I think fiction in particular is really good at this.
Yes.
Because when you're reading a novel, you're really getting inside the head of the characters. You're experiencing the world through their eyes.
That's right.
And you're feeling their emotions.
And that helps you to develop what's called theory of mind.
Yeah.
Which is basically the ability to understand that other people have thoughts and feelings that are different from your own.
Yeah. And it's so easy to forget that sometimes.
It is.
We get so caught up in our own little worlds that we forget that other people are experiencing things completely differently.
Right.
And I think fiction is just so powerful for reminding us of that.
And I think that's one of the reasons why reading can be so therapeutic.
Absolutely.
Because it helps you to connect with other human beings on a really deep level.
Yeah. And it makes you feel less alone. When you're reading about a character who's going through something similar to what you're going through.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm not the only one who feels this way.
That's right.
And I think that could be really comforting.
Absolutely. And, we've been talking a lot about fiction.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to mention nonfiction as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because nonfiction can be just as powerful for expanding your understanding of the world.
Yeah.
You can read about history, you can read about science.
Current events.
You can read about current events, you can read about different cultures.
Different countries.
Different political systems.
Biographies.
Yeah, biographies are a great example of nonfiction that can be really inspiring.
Yeah.
Because you're reading about people who have overcome challenges.
Right.
Who have achieved great things, who have lived really interesting lives.
Right. And it gives you a different perspective on history.
It does.
Because you're seeing it through the eyes of one person.
Yeah, and I think that can make it a lot more relatable.
Yes.
Because you're not just reading about dates and facts and figures.
Right.
You're reading about a real person's experience.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to read books from a variety of different cultures.
Absolutely.
Because it helps you to challenge your own assumptions.
Yeah.
About the world and to see things from a different perspective.
And I think it's especially important to read books by authors who are different from you.
Yes.
In terms of their background, their ethnicity, their gender, their sexual orientation, all of those things.
Yeah.
Because it helps you to understand the world from a more diverse range of perspectives.
Absolutely. And I think it's also important to read books that are challenging.
Oh, for sure.
Books that make you think, books that make you question your own beliefs.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things about reading.
Yeah.
Is that it can really challenge you.
Yeah.
And make you grow as a person.
Yeah. And sometimes those are the books that you remember the most. The ones that really kind of shake you up a little bit.
That stay with you.
Yeah, and make you think about things in a different way.
Yeah, and I think, reading is not just about learning about the world.
Right.
It's also about learning about yourself.
Absolutely.
Because when you're reading, you're constantly reflecting on your own thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And you're comparing your own experiences to the experiences of the characters.
Right.
And I think that can be a really valuable process of self-discovery.
It's so true. And it's a process that can continue throughout your whole life.
Absolutely.
I don't think you ever stop learning from books.
I agree.
So we've talked a lot about the benefits of reading.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important to talk about how to make reading a habit.
Yes.
Because I know a lot of people say, I wish I had more time to read, or I wish I could read more. And I think there's some really simple things that you can do to make reading a part of your daily routine.
Absolutely. And one of the most important things is to just make time for it.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for 15 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Just set aside a little bit of time each day where you can sit down and read without distractions.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to make it enjoyable.
Oh, for sure.
Don't force yourself to read something that you're not interested in.
That's right.
find books that you're excited about.
Yeah, and there are so many different genres out there.
So many.
There's something for everyone.
Yeah.
So if you don't like one genre, just try a different one.
Exactly. And I think it's also important to find a comfortable place to read.
Oh, yeah.
Whether that's in your bed or in a comfy chair or outside in the park.
Yeah, or in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Wherever you feel relaxed and comfortable.
And I think it's also helpful to have a good light.
Oh, yeah.
Because you don't want to strain your eyes.
Right.
And I think it's also good to have a drink nearby. Whether that's a cup of tea or a glass of water.
A glass of wine.
Or a glass of wine.
Yeah.
And then just relax and enjoy the book.
That's right.
And one other thing I wanted to mention is that it's okay to abandon a book.
Yes.
If you're not enjoying it.
Absolutely.
There's no shame in that.
Not at all.
There are so many books out there.
Yeah.
That you don't have to waste your time on one.
That's right.
That's not bringing you joy.
And sometimes you pick up a book and you think it's going to be one thing and it turns out to be something completely different.
Or your mood changes.
Yeah.
And you're just not in the mood for that kind of book anymore.
And that's totally fine.
That's okay.
Just put it down and pick up something else.
Exactly.
And I think it's also important to have a variety of books on your to-read list.
Oh, yeah.
So that you always have something to choose from.
Yeah. And I think it's good to have a mix of fiction and nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
And different genres within those categories.
Yeah.
So that you're always keeping your mind stimulated.
Yeah. And, we've been talking a lot about traditional books.
Right.
But I think it's important to mention ebooks and audiobooks as well.
Yes.
Because they're a great way to make reading more accessible.
Yes.
You can carry an entire library on your phone or your tablet.
Yeah.
And you can listen to audiobooks while you're doing other things.
Yeah.
Like commuting or exercising or doing chores.
And they're great for English language learners.
Absolutely.
Because you can adjust the speed.
Mm-hmm.
You can look up words that you don't know.
You can highlight passages.
Yeah, you can even get transcripts sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a lot of really great features
Absolutely.
that make ebooks and audiobooks really convenient.
And I think technology in general has made reading a lot more social.
Yeah.
There are all these online communities.
Yes.
Where people can connect and talk about books.
Yes. Book clubs online.
Yeah, book clubs online.
Bookstagrammers.
Yeah.
There's just so many different ways.
Reader reads.
Yeah. All the different platforms and apps that you can use to connect with other readers.
So it's really cool. I think, reading can be this really solitary activity, but it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
You can really make it social if you want to.
And I think that can be really motivating.
Yeah.
Because it gives you a sense of community.
Yes.
And it helps you to stay accountable.
Absolutely. So I think, we've talked about a lot of really great things about reading.
Yeah.
And I hope that this has inspired you to pick up a book.
To read more.
To read more.
Yeah.
And to really explore all the amazing benefits that reading has to offer.
That's right. And, if you're not sure where to start, just go to your local library.
Yeah.
Or bookstore.
Yeah.
And ask for recommendations.
Yes, or ask a friend.
Yeah.
That's
somebody.
There are so many people
who love to talk about books.
Absolutely.
And who would be happy to give you some suggestions.
And, you can also just browse the shelves.
Yeah.
And see what catches your eye.
Absolutely.
Sometimes the best books are the ones that you find by chance.
That's so true. And, I think one of the most important things is to just enjoy the process.
Yes.
Reading should be pleasurable.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a chore.
It should be something that you look forward to.
Absolutely.
So don't put too much pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
Just relax and enjoy the ride.
So we encourage you to get out there.
Yes.
Pick up a book and see what happens.
And happy reading.
Happy reading. And we'll catch you next time on Everyday English Pod.
See you then.